touch on my NBA power rankings. I made this list a few days ago, so this was even prior to the Ben Simmons news of him reporting. Still doesn't change where I have Philadelphia on my power rankings, but I broke it down into 6 categories, and for those of you that are listening to the audio version of it, you won't be able to see it on the screen, but the first one is the champs or bust category, which is where at number 1 I've got Milwaukee. I think they deserve to be number 1 based off the fact that they're the champs. Number 2, I've got Brooklyn. Number 3, the Lakers. Number 4, Utah. And number 5, the Suns. Was there a team that you took issue with in the top 5, Jelani?
No, not at all. Before I even get into it, I like the categories because the categories is what brought obviously the whole thing brought my attention, but I like the categories, but then it's like you also of course got to have the numbers along with it because it's like we'll talk about it later, but like Philadelphia, they're at the top, the jury's still out on them versus some of the ones at the bottom. But yeah, that first one, first 5 definitely is champ or bust for them. The only one that I may say is not really have an issue with it, but it may not really for sure it's not bust territory for them because they still have young guys and they still seem like they have a culture that's being built in Phoenix and Utah. Obviously they're the bottom of the championship bus because we expect them to be right back, one of the top 3-4 teams in the Western Conference. But I think they still have a lot of young guys, young pieces to where they continue to build to where it's not the bus part, but it's definitely champs is in their future. So yeah, I definitely like the first 5, and of course I think the most bust potential it would be Brooklyn or Los Angeles, mainly Los Angeles because of their old age,
old roster.
Yeah, it's the retirement home over there. So it's it could go really good or really bad. So they have the most bust, I guess, potential out of the champs or bust category. But I definitely like the first 5.
Second 5, I called this category on the verge because I think that these are teams that are close. If things go their way, they could potentially find themselves in the conference final, even the NBA finals, much like we saw last year with Phoenix. So at 6, I got Atlanta. 7, I have Denver. 8, I have the Heat. 9, I have Golden State. And 10, I have the Clippers. I have Denver a bit higher strictly because if Jamal does come back in time, then I could see them being on the verge of making a push and maybe being a 6 or 5 seed and a dangerous one at that. So any issue with the next 5?
Not at all. It's just kind of what we just got done talking about. It's the Clippers. They could easily very well be, one category below and the jury's still out on them with Kawhi being out and us not really knowing what type of, season Paul George is going to have for that team. So, they definitely on the verge, when healthy or if healthy, I can definitely see them being where they're at, but that's why I guess they're so close to the jury still out.
For sure.
Portion, yeah. So that's the only team that I can see that maybe can get moved, but other than that, everybody else definitely has a shot.
The third row I've got is jury's still out, as Jelani alluded to. I've got Philadelphia at 11, the Knicks at 12 with a lot of moves they made, Dallas at 13, Boston at 14, and the Bulls at 15 because they made a lot of moves as well. We didn't touch on them too much, but it's a roster that could go really well. Could be a 4 or 5 seed in the East, could also not work, and then they're finding themselves in that play-in game, which, funny enough, that's the next category, which is play-in contenders, where I've got Portland at 16, Memphis at 17, Indiana at 18, the Pelicans at 19, and the Hornets at 20. Any issues? Do you think that there's someone who should be moved up or moved down a category out of those 2?
No, I think everybody's kind of placed where they at. The only one I would possibly say is the Pelicans, just because of the turmoil that they have over there with David Griffin and possibly Zion talking about if he wants to leave or not. And just the roster moves that they've made within the last 2 years. You bring in Bledsoe and Steven Adams, which at first thought I was like, oh, this may actually be decent moves for that team. But all in all, it just didn't work out. They end up shipping them out this next year. I like them bringing in Valanciunas, but outside of that, they let Lonzo go and brought in Devontae Graham, who's a decent player, but I'd rather have kept Lonzo than brought in Devontae Graham. So they could very well be trending down, but it's one of those things where if I guess guys buy into the system and these Devontae Graham and Valanciunas, if they bring more than what the departures do, then they can very well be in that play-in spot that you have them in, but they can easily be in the trending down spot as well. But other than that, everybody's good.
Trending up and down. This is a category that's tough really to name because there's teams in this range where you could see them sprouting up, maybe getting into that play-in, but you could also see them in the category below, which is tough times ahead. So the trending up and down, I've got Sacramento at 21. I love the trio of guards that they have. How long they're going to be there is dependent on how many Buddy Hield trade rumors we have to hear this year. He's like the Miles Turner of the West.
Yeah.
Toronto at 22. I'm not very high on Toronto, and I'm sure Canadians will hate that, but I just don't think that they have the roster. I think Lowry leaving completely guts that team from a leadership standpoint. 22 is Minnesota. I mean, Russell missed time. Towns obviously dealing with his COVID situation and family situation last year, and then you've got Anthony Edwards. So they're a team that they could be trending up, but they could also stay put because it's Minnesota. The Wizards at 24 and the Cavs at 25. So any team you took issue with here?
Not at all. Definitely, like you said, they can be very, very up and down. A lot of these teams in this, like I said, I like the trio in Sacramento as well. I really like Davion, Off-Night, Mitchell for sure over there, and then all the two guys, Fox and Halliburton too. But Toronto is definitely an interesting one, and like you said, Lowry being gone is a big key, big portion that they're going to be missing and may not even seem like what or feel like it, because a lot of people are probably like high on Scotty Barnes. They still got Van Fleet, they got Pascal, they got OG that has been looking good when healthy as well.
So good in preseason.
I know, right? And but it's like they could very well be in that play-in contenders category if things go their way. Only because like you look at the teams that was in it last year in the East. Charlotte and the Wizards, and forget the other team that Charlotte had to play. But they could be bottom feeders in the Eastern Conference and possibly play for the play-in. But I definitely can see it can go up or down. And like I said, Kyle Lowry being a big loss can very well be why they go down.
For sure. And the bottom five, these are the tough times ahead. Some of these teams have some young players that I like, but as far as like an overall roster makeup, it's not very good. San Antonio at 26 is more of a respect thing because I actually think they could finish even lower this year, given the roster that they have. Like, I wouldn't be shocked if you see them 29 by the end of the year. Houston at 27. I mean, they're projecting them at like 28 wins this year. They're a team that I could see far exceeding that, going on to win 32, 33 games. But if injuries happen like we saw with Christian Wood last year, I think that changes everything, and that drops them back to where 28 range. Detroit at 28, you've got Cade, you've got some of the pieces I mentioned earlier. Just not a team that I'm super high on this year. They're in full on rebuild mode. They know it, but they drafted well last year with Bay and Stewart, and they got some nice pieces there. Oklahoma City, it's basically Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Lou Dort, and what else? A lot of rookies. So, they'll be fighting for minutes, and hopefully Josh Giddey plays some defense because he definitely wasn't in preseason. And then Orlando at 30. I just think this might be verge of one of the worst teams in NBA history. Jonathan Isaac and Terrence Ross, like those are going to be your scorers this year, and then you have a lot of guys that have dealt with injuries, and they're very young, so they have a new coach, so who knows how that's going to work with him. So they need to start building a culture in Orlando more than anything else. Any issue? Did you see any of the teams, even like the category up, that could have been lower, or vice versa?
Nah, category, like when you look at it and think about it, if you said roster top to bottom, it's like 21 25, they look like they deserve to be right there, and 25 to 30, they look like they deserve to be right there. Like nobody can move up or down within this 21 to 30 range, really, or at least they shouldn't. I think all of the teams in tough times that are definitely in rebuild mode. San Antonio lost a lot this offseason. They have young players, but it's really that, like all these teams have young guys that we're excited to see, but roster makeup top to bottom is just not going to be there. And wins aren't probably going to be in their future much, but it's going to be interesting to see them play because, like I said, all these young guys are going to get so much time and so much minutes because that's just literally all they have. But I agree with every single one of them from 26 to 30.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of bad teams this year, a lot of top-heavy teams, but definitely going to be an exciting NBA season.